So this one's interesting. Say you had a more supportive and modern husband who was very attentive, like Sam or any of the other guys. Do you think it would have been easier to co-parent, or would you still prefer to be the singular voice of
No.
decision making?
I only wanted to be, because we couldn't get on the same page when it came to disciplinary measures and how to deal with kids. The men that I were married to, it was all just like bam, just instant anger, instant punishment, and there was no plan. If they had listened to me and followed my lead, oh yeah, it would have been way easier. It would have been a lot nicer. The only reason I felt like I wanted to do it by myself is because and having them enter it always made it worse. Kids would be crying within 5 minutes of either one of them coming into the room, and that's what made it hard. I envy a lot of the young girls now. They have a lot more help, and even though they think that they're not getting as much help as they should, it's still way better than it used to be. So, yeah, I would not have elected to do it by myself had I had a man that cared enough to know or even study or whatever.
Yeah, I learned a little bit about it.
Yeah.
What would you have done differently, even as just an individual main parent? Like now that you know the things you know now, what would you have done differently back then?
I guess I would have instituted the way I parented you guys toward the latter, more to the front.
Okay, the first kids.
First kids. But I also didn't have because by then I had the tools that I needed. I had read hundreds, books on child rearing, and magazine articles at the wazoo, and I was reading those kind of things before I had kids.
Yeah.
It's just something that has always interested me, and embarrassingly, I still do. I still read them. I have nobody left to rear. Everybody's gone. And I still read those kind of articles or books. Always appeal to me.
Well, you're still talking to us,
right?
As
I figure I can spew out my
so.
advice if I want to, and just as you were kids, you can either take it or leave it, but it's there.
Yeah.
I've put in the research and the time and the book learning and all that, probably more than most people have. So that's what makes me an expert. And not to mention all the kids I've watched along with having my own. So, I don't know even if people read books anymore about that. But
I'm sure they do. Or watch hundreds of YouTube videos at the
I
very
guess,
least.
more like that, watching other parents struggle away.
Do you think it would have helped you to have had more personal voices? Like, I think we'd discussed how Emily watches, like, mothers on YouTube,
right.
and obviously she's not the only one. These things have millions of views. Do you think that would have been useful for you when you were younger, just having a more personal
having
figure?
anything on the internet would have been useful. Fortunately, I had a big enough social life that I could talk to other mothers, at church and that kind of thing, about the same thing and watch them struggle along with me. And that helped a lot. I think, that would have been a big help. Just being able to order things and not have to go to the store would have been a big help.
That's true. Having Amazon Pantry or diapers delivered
Oh gosh, diapers delivered to your door, that would have been awesome. But it definitely would have been, and I think it's cool that they get to do that and have that feeling like they're not so alone and isolated in what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
Because everybody feels like that. My kid's the one that does that. That's the problem. Why am I such a horrible parent? My kid's spazzing out in the middle of the store. Nobody else's kids do that.
Just having that immediate support there, or at least something that you can relate to. Somebody can relate to. I can see that. What would you say, like, your lowest days as a parent were? Maybe through depression from something that's happened, or just maybe the hormones at that time?
When everybody was sick. That was always, and I was sick too. Because sometimes I'd get lucky and you guys would get sick and I would be okay. But a lot of times I would catch it and then all of us would be sick. And I remember once having to go pick up Dad from the airport because he didn't want to ask anybody else and bother them, so it was okay to bother me. I was pregnant with you. We all had the stomach flu, and so everybody has a bowl in front of them. I packed them, everybody in the car, and we're all just like, I mean, that was undoubtedly, along with that was really bad because I remember going, why can't he just find somebody to take him home? You know, and of course that was just out of the question.
Right.
That was bad. And there was once after you were born when the infamous spaghetti throw up fest that Emmy and Jay had at 3 a.m, and there was just barf everywhere. I'm trying to keep them, of course they're crying because it's all in their hair and they're all upset, and I'm trying to keep them quiet so they don't wake you up. And then I hear Dad, you know, yelling about the light being in his eyes, and you know, I wanted to kill him first and then attend to you guys. But I remember just going over and slamming the door, and then I put them in the tub. And of course, no kid wants to take a bath at 3 a.m. And I'm, you know, of course, I have to like scoop all the spaghetti and throw it in the toilet so it doesn't go down the drain, and then change all the sheets. And you know, I'm tired anyway, and that was a real low point. I'm like, oh God.
It's also a great bonding moment.
Yes. that was like, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel was like a pinprick at that point.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm never going to get through this. I'm just going to die trying. But yeah, those are two that stick out in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, on the reverse side of things, like, what would be your most proud point as a parent then?
Oh gosh, I like billions of those. The usual, you know, when kids graduated or, you know, finished a project they've been sweating over a lot and got a good grade. And I'm trying to think of something specific. I remember you came up with something the night before it was due.
I think that was mostly you. If you're thinking of the time when we used the prosthetic finger to
Yes.
put contact lenses on, it was a science project where
Right.
I was supposed to invent something useful. I was like in 3rd grade or less, maybe
Right.
2nd. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, how am I supposed to make something useful? I'm an idiot. And I think you mentioned something about your mom having done little
Right.
prosthetic fingers sticking out of a cup that she would put contact lenses on for your uncle.
Right. And
Yes.
you got an A on that
Yeah,
project.
because he had no arms. That
Right.
would be the utility
Yeah, she
for
was
it.
always trying to find ways that he could help himself more
Yeah.
because he had that issue and he wanted to wear contacts instead of glasses. And yeah, I called her and told her about that.
She proud.
I said, yeah, said your project got an A.
Good job.
Good job.
Yeah, 30 or
We
40
totally
years
stole
later.
it from you. It wasn't even an original idea from us, but
Yeah, well, I'm sure none of those kids really came up with anything.
that was a proud moment for me that I actually remembered something that we could do that quickly
That did work out
with,
well.
you know, minimal amounts of time.
The usual science fair, like cardboard cutouts. And,
Yeah.
or big old
That always
cardboard
made me cringe because science was like my weakest subject. I'm like, oh, I hate science fair stuff.
And they always tried to leave it open-ended because they wanted you to use your brain and try to think of stuff.
Right.
And of course, that just makes it so ambiguous. Like, you don't normally spend days trying to figure out how to come up with something new.
There was another one that Jay had where it was a toothbrush. If someone didn't, once again, I was thinking about my uncle, didn't have arms and could work a toothbrush with a pedal. And that turned out pretty good. I think he got a good grade with that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the toothbrush was just was stuck on some kind of stick, and then somehow he made it go up and down. Of course, it wouldn't have been very efficient, but
Right.
he was like in 3rd grade too, so it was,
That works out.
yeah, those kinds of
We
things.
have learned that your uncle came up with.
He was such an integral part of my growing up for like 5 years, from the time I entered junior high to high school, and just watching all these different things my mom was trying to come up with to help him dress himself and do it, you know, things like that more easily. That was always in my mind. And there was another thing, something about a zipper pull that he could put on a zipper so he could pull up his pants. He could get them up by himself by like jumping up and down because his pants were always real loose, but then trying to get them snapped and zippered up.
Yeah.
He was pretty agile with his feet, though.
Oh, yeah, I remember him like using the remote and holding glasses and stuff.
Oh
It's really
yeah,
strong.
he could draw too. He actually drew better, and his handwriting was better than my father's. But you know, he could do a lot. It's amazing what you can do with what you have.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered that question. I
No, it's
spun off
okay.
into
Well,
something.
no, that's the whole point of this. It's not just to like give factual answers.
Oh,
Like,
good.
just-
I don't know what to go with.
just to meander and see what comes up. But I guess I'm always curious too. What did you hate so much about the schools that we went to? Like I remember that was an integral part of my growing up. Was my mom hates my school.
That's right. I hate school, the school systems in general. It doesn't matter what school it was. I think the thing I didn't like about it was their inflexibility. It was always, to me, there was this narrow path that you had to walk through, and there was only a few kids that could go in that path and feel comfortable and be okay with. I think Jay was probably one of them. But it really excluded the vast majority of other kids who just had a hard time getting into that one path, and I felt like their whole philosophy was, this is the way it's done, just do it this way. And it's like telling me that there's only one way to do something, and nothing burns my butt more than that. And so there was no flexibility, there was no well, they're just kids, you know. Like when you had that spitting water contest with your friend. I get called for that? I mean, come on, you know. The first thing out of my mouth was he spit water at somebody, and she goes, "Oh no, he didn't do that." I'm like, "Okay, well, explain to me what they were having this water spitting contest." And I'm like, "He's 5. What else is he gonna do?" He's kind of like, you know, limited on his, you know, abilities there if he doesn't want to skip rope or play, you know, foursquare or something.
Right.
And that kind of torqued me. And then there was another incident when Chris was defending a friend of his. His friend had gotten into this fight with this other kid, and the other kid was beating up on his friend, something like that.
Yeah.
And he went and was trying to pull them off. And the school rule was, if the teacher has to separate them, they get suspended for 3 days. And so, you know, I always taught you guys that when you go to school, you can defend yourself, you just better not throw the first punch.
Yeah.
And so we get called in the office, and the lady that the other kid was getting suspended was in there just ranting and raving at this vice principal. And I'm just like, oh, I can't believe I have to do this. And so I take Chris in, and I talk to her, and she's explaining it's just school policy, and it's just, you know, you could tell she didn't agree with it either.
Yeah.
But it's just the way it is. And I said, well, I'm not going to punish him. As far as I'm concerned, it's a 3-day holiday for him.
Yeah.
He was defending a friend, and he wasn't hitting anybody.
Right.
He was just, they just had to pull him apart. And it's just things like that just rubbed me the wrong way about the school system. And there's just too much rigidity in it and not enough flexibility. And I get it, you know, they have a bunch of kids. They can't just have people, you know, running around everywhere.
Right.
But at the same time, that just, I don't know, I didn't agree with it. And most of their rules just seemed really stupid. And, you know, there were teachers that didn't get along with certain kids like Chris. You know, if he didn't like the teacher, then forget it. You know, that year was shot. And of course, when he went into middle school and high school, when he had many teachers, then that was going to be the subject he did not do well in. And instead of the teacher trying to figure out, you know, why is this kid and me not getting along, it was just automatic. This is the kid's problem. He needs to go away.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that.
I can understand that. I mean, we all hated the school, but even as I got older, like I didn't change my mind and decide, you know, the teachers were right. Like it was usually just an inflexibility of it.
Right, and they don't want to listen to anybody, or especially one of the kids.
Yeah.
You know, how they feel about anything is like, so who cares? You know?
It didn't matter how logical it was. You were being a smartass at that point.
Right.
So.
Yeah. It's the whole thing is you're disagreeing with me, which means you're disrespectful, which means you know I don't want you to have any opinion except mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did and will probably always have a great dislike about schools.
Did you consider homeschooling?
I did once when we lived on base, but nobody seemed all keen on that, especially Nat. She's like, no. I did a lot of research on it too. I wanted to do it, but then I thought, well, this isn't gonna do much good if nobody's keen with it. You know, you wanna be with friends and stuff. Plus, I really believe, if your kid goes to I won't say a crappy school, but one that's not that, academically up to par, they're still going to learn if they're going to, I mean, none of you went to any schools that were very stellar, and you're all smart individuals, so learning takes place all the time.
I got my own personal thought is I feel like parenting is kind of like health, where everyone has their own opinion and a lot of it's not backed up very well. What would you say is like some of the worst and most common advice given to parents? Or at least just doesn't have to be the worst, but just some commonly bad information given to people.
I don't know if there is any bad information. I think there's information that is not complete, and it tends to be like, this is how a 3-year-old should act, this is how a 4-year-old should be. It's a guide, and it's but
it's oversimplified.
I think the bad advice, believe it or not, comes from doctors.
Really?
Because they'll, like, Zach didn't talk when he was 2 years old. Well, Chris didn't talk till he was 3. And they made it sound like this was really a problem, that he could not communicate through verbal. He could, he just chose not to. It's really what it was. And Emily, they ended up like saying he should have special help with this or special help with that, and she had to go through the city or something to have some speech therapist or whatever come and help him. And he did a little bit better, but by the time he was 3, he was talking. But they made it out to be this huge problem, and of course she was worried about it. And I think doctors are the ones that have the worst advice when it comes to kids. As far as what developmentally should be happening. There's just, again, no room for any kind of deviation. It's that narrow path that your kid needs to be on. Otherwise, there's something wrong with him, kind of stuff. And there's nothing wrong. He just chose not to talk, just because, probably more because he was lazy, because that was Chris's problem. It was easier to grunt and point at something. And I remember looking down at Chris going, you know the word, say it or you're not getting it, And he would, try, and eventually he started talking. But boys talk later usually than girls do anyway. Girls are little chatterboxes, and like Amy, and I always call her a chatterbox. She thinks that's funny. I'm a chatterbox.
So proud of it.
A silly button and a chatterbox.